28 years of silence shattered when my phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Mom's name flashed across the screen like a ghost from my past. Her voice cracked through the speaker, desperate and broken, in ways I had never heard before. She needed my signature on some urgent legal documents, something about saving the family estate from foreclosure. The woman who once told me I would die poor and forgotten was now begging for my help. But what she did not know was that I had discovered her darkest secret 3 months ago, and I had been waiting for exactly this moment to make her pay. Before we dive into this wild family revenge story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If you are ready to see how karma finally caught up with someone who destroyed my childhood, hit that like button and subscribe for more justice-served stories. Trust me, you will not believe how this unfolds. My name is Seraphina, and for 28 years I believed I was the family disappointment. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, my mother Margaret made sure I understood my place in the family hierarchy every single day. My older brother Marcus was the golden child who could do no wrong while I was treated like an unwelcome burden who somehow kept disappointing everyone around me. From the time I could walk, Mom made it crystal clear that Marcus was destined for greatness while I was destined for mediocrity. When Marcus brought home a B+, it was celebrated with dinner at his favorite restaurant. When I brought home an A+, Mom would examine the paper suspiciously and ask why it was not an A++, or she would find some way to diminish the achievement entirely. She would say things like, "Well, that teacher probably grades easy," or, "I hope you did not cheat like last time," even though I had never cheated on anything in my entire life. The emotional abuse was relentless and systematic. Mom had this way of making me feel small and worthless with just a few carefully chosen words. She would tell me that I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy. When I would cry after her cruel comments, she would roll her eyes and say, "Here we go again with the waterworks." She convinced me that my emotional responses to her abuse were character flaws rather than natural reactions to psychological torture. Marcus, meanwhile, was showered with praise, expensive gifts, and endless opportunities. He got piano lessons, tennis lessons, and later a brand new BMW for his 16th birthday. When I asked for art supplies to pursue my passion for painting, Mom would say we could not afford such frivolous expenses. When I needed money for school supplies, she would sigh heavily and act like I was asking for her kidney. The message was always the same. Marcus deserved investment, but I was just a drain on the family resources. The financial favoritism became more obvious as we got older. Mom paid for Marcus's entire college education at Yale without him taking out a single loan. She even gave him money for his first apartment in Manhattan after graduation. When it came time for me to apply to college, suddenly there was no money available. Mom told me I would have to take out student loans if I wanted an education, and she made it sound like I was being greedy for even asking about family financial support. "Your brother earned his opportunities through hard work and dedication," she would say with that smug expression I grew to hate. "If you want the same things, you need to prove you deserve them." The implication was always that I had not proven myself worthy of love support or investment, no matter how hard I tried to excel in school and extracurricular activities. The emotional manipulation reached its peak during my senior year of high school. I had worked incredibly hard to maintain a perfect GPA while also working part-time to save money for college. I was accepted to several excellent schools with partial scholarships, and I was proud of what I had accomplished despite the lack of family support. When I excitedly showed Mom my acceptance letters, hoping finally to receive some acknowledgement of my achievements, she barely glanced at them before delivering the blow that would haunt me for years. "Seraphina," she said with cold detachment, "I need you to understand something about yourself. You are not special. You are not talented. You are certainly not as smart as you think you are. These schools are accepting you because they need to fill quotas, not because you actually deserve to be there. Your brother got into Yale because he is exceptional. You are getting into these schools because they are desperate for students who can pay full tuition." She continued her brutal assessment while I stood there feeling like the ground was dissolving beneath my feet. You have always been jealous of Marcus's success, and that jealousy has made you delusional about your own capabilities. You think if you work hard enough, you can achieve what he has achieved naturally. But hard work cannot make up for a lack of natural talent and intelligence. You will never amount to anything significant in this world, and the sooner you accept that reality, the happier you will be. The words hit me like physical blows. Everything I had believed about myself, everything I had worked toward, everything I had dreamed of achieving, suddenly felt foolish and naive. Mom saw the devastation on my face and pressed her advantage, driving the knife deeper into my already wounded self-esteem. "I am telling you this because I love you," she said with fake maternal concern. "It would be cruel to let you continue living in this fantasy where you think you are going to accomplish great things. Better you learn now that you are ordinary so you can set realistic expectations for your life. Maybe you can find a nice man to take care of you, or maybe you can get a stable job as a secretary or something. But please stop pretending you are going to be somebody important." That conversation broke something fundamental inside me. For years afterward, I struggled with imposter syndrome and self-doubt that made it difficult to pursue my goals with confidence. Every time I achieved something, I could hear Mom's voice telling me it was just luck or charity rather than merit. Every time I failed at something, I could hear her saying that she had warned me about my limitations. I moved across the country for college, partly to escape the toxic family dynamic, and partly because I could not bear to stay in the same state where Marcus was being celebrated while I was being systematically destroyed. I worked multiple jobs to pay for school, lived in the cheapest housing I could find, and survived on ramen noodles and determination. I graduated with honors, despite having no family support, but even that achievement felt hollow, because I knew Mom would find a way to diminish it. After college, I moved to Seattle and threw myself into building a career in tech marketing. I worked insane hours, took on projects nobody else wanted, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder through pure determination and skill. I was successful by any objective measure, but Mom's voice in my head made it impossible to feel truly confident about my accomplishments. Every promotion felt like a fluke. Every success felt temporary and undeserved. For 15 years after college, I had minimal contact with my family. I would send obligatory birthday cards and Christmas gifts, but I avoided phone calls and visits whenever possible. The pain of being around Mom was too intense, and I had finally built a life where I felt valued and respected. I had no desire to subject myself to her psychological torture again, even for short visits. Marcus, meanwhile, had become a successful lawyer in New York. According to the sparse information I gathered from mutual acquaintances, he had married well, bought a house in the Hamptons, and was living exactly the kind of privileged life Mom had always predicted for him. I felt no resentment toward Marcus himself, because I understood that he was just as much a victim of Mom's manipulation as I was, albeit in a different way. He had been trained to expect constant praise and support, which probably made adult life challenging when the real world did not automatically hand him everything he wanted. 3 months before that desperate phone call, my entire understanding of my family history was turned upside down by a chance encounter that revealed the truth behind decades of lies and manipulation. I was in Boston for a work conference when I decided to visit my old college roommate Sarah, who had become a successful financial advisor. We were catching up over dinner when she mentioned that she had recently helped a client navigate some complex inheritance issues involving family trusts and estate planning. "You know, it is fascinating how family money can completely change dynamics between siblings," Sarah said casually while we shared dessert. "I had this case recently where one sibling had no idea they were supposed to inherit millions because their parents had hidden the trust documents for decades. The parents had been giving the other sibling access to the money while telling the first sibling they were too irresponsible to handle finances." Something about her story triggered a strange feeling in my stomach, like a puzzle piece clicking into place in a way I did not quite understand yet. I found myself asking more questions about how family trusts work and how parents might manipulate inheritance information to control their children's behavior. Sarah explained that some wealthy families use trust funds as tools of psychological manipulation, doling out information and access based on compliance and favoritism rather than legal rights. The really sick part, Sarah continued, is that sometimes parents will completely fabricate financial hardship to justify treating one child differently. They will claim they cannot afford to help with college or other expenses while secretly having millions in assets. It is a form of financial abuse that can destroy family relationships for generations. The conversation haunted me for weeks afterward. I found myself remembering strange inconsistencies in my family's financial story that I had never questioned before. Why had there always been money for Marcus's activities but never for mine? Why had Mom claimed she could not help with my college expenses when she had just renovated the kitchen and bought a new luxury car? Why had she been so secretive about family finances while also complaining constantly about money problems? I decided to do some digging, starting with public records and property databases. What I discovered made my blood run cold, and my hands shake as I scrolled through document after document of evidence that my entire childhood had been built on lies. Our family was not just comfortable financially. We were wealthy. Extremely wealthy. My grandfather, whom I barely remembered because he died when I was young, had been a successful real estate developer who left behind a substantial estate. According to the probate records I found online, he had established a trust fund that was supposed to provide for both Marcus and me equally. The trust was worth over $8 million when I finally located the documents, and it had been generating substantial income for decades. But here was the devastating part: Mom had been the trustee responsible for managing the fund and distributing money according to the terms my grandfather had established. Instead of following his wishes, she had been systematically stealing from my portion of the inheritance while giving Marcus full access to his share. Every time she claimed we could not afford something for me, she had been lying. Every time she made me feel guilty for asking for basic necessities, she had been sitting on millions of dollars that legally belonged to me. The trust documents showed that my grandfather had specifically wanted both grandchildren to have their college educations fully funded with additional money available for housing, career development, and major life expenses. Marcus had received every penny he was entitled to and more, while I had received nothing. Mom had been forging my signature on various documents to make it appear that I had received distributions, when in fact, she had been funneling that money into her own accounts. I hired a lawyer who specialized in trust and estate fraud, and together we pieced together the full scope of Mom's criminal behavior. Over the past 15 years, she had stolen approximately $2.5 million from my inheritance. She had used this money to maintain her lifestyle, pay for Marcus's advantages, and even make investments in her own name, using funds that should have been held in trust for me. The lawyer explained that what Mom had done was not just morally reprehensible but also criminal. As a trustee, she had a fiduciary duty to act in the beneficiary's best interests, and instead she had systematically violated that duty for her own benefit. The forgery of my signature alone was enough to result in serious criminal charges, not to mention the embezzlement and breach of fiduciary duty. But the financial theft was only part of the picture. The psychological abuse suddenly made sense in a whole new way. Mom had not just been cruel to me out of some personality disorder or mental illness. She had been deliberately destroying my self-esteem to prevent me from questioning the family financial situation. By convincing me that I was worthless and undeserving, she had made it less likely that I would investigate my inheritance or demand my legal rights. The years of being told I was not smart enough, not talented enough, not worthy of investment, suddenly revealed themselves as a calculated psychological campaign designed to keep me from discovering her crimes. Every cruel comment, every comparison to Marcus, every instance of being made to feel like a burden had been part of a deliberate strategy to maintain her cover story and continue her theft. I realized that Marcus probably had no idea what was happening. From his perspective, he was just receiving the family support he had always been promised, and he likely assumed I was receiving similar support that I simply chose not to discuss. Mom had been careful to maintain the illusion of fairness while actually orchestrating a massive transfer of wealth from one child to another. The most sickening part was understanding how thoroughly Mom had manipulated my entire sense of reality. I had spent decades believing I was the family disappointment when in fact I was the family victim. I had apologized for being a financial burden when I should have been demanding the millions of dollars that were rightfully mine. I had felt guilty for resenting Marcus's advantages when I should have been furious about the systematic theft of my inheritance. Armed with this knowledge, I began planning my response carefully. I could have simply filed criminal charges immediately and pursued civil litigation to recover the stolen funds. But after decades of psychological abuse, I wanted something more than just legal justice. I wanted Mom to experience the same feeling of powerlessness and betrayal that she had inflicted on me for so many years. I wanted her to understand what it felt like to have your whole world collapse because someone you trusted had been lying to you all along. So I waited. I gathered evidence, built my legal case, and prepared for the right moment to reveal everything I had discovered. I knew that eventually Mom would need something from me, and when that moment came, I would be ready to give her a taste of her own medicine. I never imagined that the opportunity would come in the form of a desperate late-night phone call about saving the family estate from foreclosure. After discovering the truth about my stolen inheritance, I spent 3 months carefully orchestrating what would become the most satisfying reversal of power in my entire life. But I was not planning to act alone. The scale of Mom's deception and the years of psychological damage she had inflicted required a response that would be both legally sound and emotionally devastating. I needed allies who could help me execute a plan that would expose her crimes while also giving her a taste of the helplessness she had made me feel for decades. My first ally was Rebecca Martinez, the estate attorney who had helped me uncover the truth about the trust fund theft. Rebecca was a fierce advocate for victims of financial abuse, and she was personally outraged by what Mom had done to me. She had seen similar cases before, but she told me that the psychological manipulation component made my situation particularly egregious. Your mother did not just steal your money, Rebecca explained during one of our strategy sessions. She systematically destroyed your self-worth to prevent you from questioning her theft. That level of calculated psychological abuse goes beyond simple embezzlement. She turned you into an accomplice in your own victimization by making you believe you deserved nothing. Rebecca helped me understand the full legal landscape of my case. We could pursue criminal charges for embezzlement, forgery, and breach of fiduciary duty. We could also file civil suits to recover the stolen funds, plus interest and damages. But Rebecca suggested something even more powerful, using the legal system to strip Mom of her power and give me control over the family finances. If we can prove she is an unfit trustee who has been stealing from the trust, we can petition the court to remove her and appoint you as the successor trustee, Rebecca explained. That would give you control over not just your own inheritance, but also oversight of your brother's distributions and access to all the family financial records. Your mother would go from being in complete control to having no control at all. The idea of becoming the person who controlled Mom's access to money was incredibly appealing after decades of being made to feel like a financial burden. But I knew I would need more than just legal support to pull this off effectively. I needed people who understood the family dynamics and could help me navigate the emotional complexity of what I was planning. My second major ally came from an unexpected source, Marcus himself. I had been dreading the conversation where I would have to tell my brother about Mom's crimes, partly because I was afraid he might not believe me, and partly because I was worried he might have known about the theft all along. But when I finally worked up the courage to call him, his reaction was everything I had hoped for and more. "Seraphina, I had no idea," Marcus said, and I could hear the genuine shock and horror in his voice. "I always wondered why you seemed so resentful about money growing up, and I felt guilty about getting so much support when you clearly needed help too. I asked Mom about it several times over the years, and she always said you were too proud to accept family money or that you had specifically requested to be financially independent. Marcus was devastated to learn that his advantages had come at the expense of my inheritance, and he immediately offered to help me pursue justice against Mom. He also revealed information that helped me understand the full scope of her manipulation and control. She has been managing all the family finances for years, Marcus told me. Dad basically checked out after retirement and lets Mom handle everything. I get monthly distributions from what I thought was just my trust fund, but I never see any detailed accounting of where the money comes from. Now I am wondering if she has been stealing from other sources too. Marcus agreed to work with my attorney to review all his financial records and help us trace the flow of money from the trust fund. He also offered to help me gather evidence about Mom's current financial situation and her claims about the family estate being in foreclosure. That foreclosure story does not make sense, Marcus said. The family house has been paid off for years, and there are multiple income-producing properties that should be generating plenty of cash flow. If she is claiming we are facing foreclosure, either she has been lying about our financial situation for years, or she has been stealing from those assets too. With Marcus on my side, I felt confident enough to expand my investigation and bring in additional allies who could help me understand the full scope of Mom's financial crimes. My third major ally was David Kim, a forensic accountant who specialized in unraveling complex financial fraud cases. David agreed to take on my case after Rebecca explained the situation, and his analysis revealed that Mom's theft was even more extensive than we had initially discovered. She had not just stolen from my trust fund distributions, she had been systematically looting multiple family financial accounts for over a decade. Your mother has been running what is essentially a personal financial empire built on stolen money, David explained after reviewing months of financial records. She has been taking money from the trust fund, from rental property income, from investment accounts, and even from your father's retirement savings. She then created a complex web of personal accounts and investments to hide the stolen funds. David's forensic analysis revealed that Mom had stolen over $4 million from various family accounts, not just the $2.5 million from my trust fund. She had been using this money to fund a lifestyle that was completely disconnected from the family's actual financial situation. While claiming to Dad and everyone else that money was tight, she had been secretly investing in luxury real estate, expensive art collections, and high-end investment portfolios. The most disturbing part, David continued, is that she has been creating artificial financial crises to justify her theft. The foreclosure threat she mentioned to you is completely fabricated. The family estate is not only not in foreclosure, but it has actually increased substantially in value over the past few years. She is claiming there is a financial emergency that requires your signature because she needs to access accounts that legally require both children's consent. This revelation added a whole new dimension to my planning. Mom was not just calling me out of desperation. She was trying to manipulate me into giving her access to even more money that she could steal. The signature she needed was apparently for a refinancing arrangement that would allow her to extract equity from properties that were supposed to be held for the entire family's benefit. Armed with this information, I realized I had an opportunity to do something even more satisfying than simply exposing Mom's crimes. I could use her own manipulation tactics against her and make her reveal the truth about her financial situation while thinking she was still in control of the narrative. My fourth and most crucial ally emerged from my professional network. Jennifer Walsh was a colleague from my tech marketing days who had become a successful crisis management consultant. When I explained my situation to Jennifer, she immediately understood the strategic opportunity I was facing. Your mother has been controlling the family narrative for decades, Jennifer said. She has positioned herself as the responsible financial manager while painting you as irresponsible and unworthy. If we can flip that narrative and expose her as the actual financial criminal, we can destroy her credibility while rehabilitating your reputation with everyone who has believed her lies. Jennifer helped me develop a comprehensive plan for exposing Mom's crimes in a way that would maximize the impact and ensure that everyone in our extended family and social circle understood the truth about what had been happening. She also helped me prepare for the psychological aspects of confronting someone who had been manipulating and abusing me for decades. The most important thing is to remember that everything she says to you during this process will be an attempt to regain control, Jennifer warned me. She will try to make you feel guilty. She will try to minimize what she has done, and she will probably try to blame you for forcing her to steal from you. You need to be prepared for her to use every psychological weapon she has ever used against you, but this time you will have the power to shut her down. With my team of allies assembled and my evidence carefully documented, I was ready to respond to Mom's desperate phone call. But I did not want to simply reveal everything I knew and let her face the consequences. I wanted her to experience the same kind of psychological manipulation she had put me through, where reality slowly crumbled, and she realized that everything she thought she knew about her situation was actually a lie. So I decided to play along with her foreclosure story and let her dig herself deeper into a hole of lies and manipulation while I gathered even more evidence of her crimes. I would make her think she was successfully manipulating me one more time right up until the moment I pulled the rug out from under her and revealed that I had known about her theft all along. The phone call that had started this whole confrontation was just the beginning. What Mom did not know was that she had just walked into a trap that would expose decades of lies and finally give me the justice I had been denied my entire life. The plan was unfolding perfectly until the moment my own brother stabbed me in the back. For 6 weeks after Mom's desperate phone call, I had been carefully gathering evidence while pretending to consider helping her with the supposed foreclosure crisis. She had been calling me regularly each conversation, revealing more lies and desperate attempts to manipulate me into signing documents that would give her access to millions more in family assets. During these calls, Mom pulled out every psychological weapon she had ever used against me. She alternated between fake maternal warmth and cruel emotional manipulation, sometimes within the same conversation. One minute she would be telling me how proud she was of my success and how sorry she was that we had grown apart, and the next minute she would be implying that I was being selfish and ungrateful for not immediately rushing to help the family in their time of need. Seraphina, I know we have had our differences over the years, she said during one particularly manipulative call. But family is family, and when there is a crisis, we need to pull together. Your father and I are facing the loss of everything we have worked for our entire lives. Surely you cannot hold childhood grudges when we are talking about real financial devastation. I played my part perfectly, expressing concern and asking detailed questions about the foreclosure timeline and the documents she needed me to sign. With each conversation, she revealed more information about her fabricated crisis and her real financial situation. She had no idea that I was recording every call and sharing the transcripts with my legal team as evidence of her ongoing fraud and manipulation. Meanwhile, my allies were working behind the scenes to build an airtight case against her. Rebecca was preparing criminal charges and civil suits that would strip Mom of all her financial power and send her to prison for her crimes. David, the forensic accountant, was documenting every stolen dollar and tracing the money through Mom's complex web of hidden accounts. Jennifer was developing a media strategy that would expose Mom's crimes to everyone in our family and social circle. Marcus had been invaluable in this process, providing access to financial records and helping us understand the full scope of Mom's deception. He had been genuinely horrified to learn about the theft and abuse, and he seemed committed to helping me get justice. We had been working closely together for weeks, and I was starting to feel like I finally had the brother relationship I had always wanted. That is why Marcus's betrayal hit me so hard when it finally came. 3 days before I planned to confront Mom with evidence of her crimes, Marcus called me with devastating news that threatened to destroy everything I had been working toward. Seraphina, I need to tell you something, and I hope you will understand why I had to do this. Marcus said, his voice heavy with guilt and anxiety. I talked to Mom about your investigation. I told her everything we discovered about the trust fund and the theft. She knows that you know about the missing money. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I could not speak, could not breathe, could not process what Marcus had just told me. After weeks of planning and evidence gathering, after finally building a case that would expose Mom's crimes and give me the justice I deserved, my own brother had warned the criminal about what was coming. Why was all I could manage to say. Why would you do that to me? Marcus's explanation revealed a level of psychological manipulation that I had never fully understood before. Mom had not just controlled me through abuse and lies. She had controlled Marcus through a different but equally effective form of emotional manipulation that made him feel responsible for protecting her and maintaining family harmony at all costs. She broke down completely when I confronted her, Marcus said, his voice cracking with emotion. She admitted to taking money from the trust fund, but she said she only did it because she was trying to protect the family from Dad's gambling addiction. She said Dad had been secretly gambling away their retirement savings, and she had to use trust fund money to cover the losses and prevent the family from losing everything. I could not believe what I was hearing. Even when caught red-handed, Mom was still lying and manipulating, and Marcus was still falling for it. She had created an entirely new fabrication to explain away her theft, and somehow she had convinced Marcus that her crimes were actually heroic acts of family protection. She showed me bank statements and credit card bills that prove Dad has been gambling, Marcus continued. Apparently, he has lost over $600,000 in the past 5 years, and Mom has been using trust fund money to pay off his debts and keep him from destroying their marriage and the family finances. This new story was so obviously false that I was amazed Marcus could not see through it, but I realized that Mom had decades of practice in manipulating him through guilt and family loyalty. She knew exactly which emotional buttons to push to make him feel like he needed to protect her, even when she was clearly the villain in the situation. Marcus, she is lying to you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, even though I was screaming inside. The forensic accountant found no evidence of gambling debts or Dad's financial irresponsibility. She has been stealing money for her own benefit, not to save the family from some crisis. She is playing you the same way she has always played you. But Marcus had already made his choice. Mom had convinced him that exposing her crimes would destroy Dad's reputation and tear the family apart permanently. She had painted herself as a martyr who was sacrificing her own legal safety to protect everyone else, and Marcus felt obligated to help her avoid the consequences of her actions. I cannot let you send our mother to prison, Marcus said with finality. Whatever she has done wrong, she did it out of love for this family. We need to find a way to resolve this privately, without involving criminal charges or public exposure. The betrayal was devastating not just because it threatened my legal case, but because it revealed that Marcus had never really been on my side at all. Despite weeks of seeming to support me and expressing outrage about Mom's treatment of me, when forced to choose between protecting me and protecting her, he chose her without hesitation. Within hours of Marcus's confession, Mom called me with a completely different tone and approach. She was no longer the desperate victim begging for my help. She was back to being the controlling matriarch who expected compliance and obedience from her wayward daughter. Seraphina, I understand you have been talking to lawyers and making threats about money that you think belongs to you, she said with icy calm. Marcus has explained to me what you think you discovered, and I want you to know that you have completely misunderstood the situation. Every penny I took from the trust fund was used to protect this family from your father's gambling addiction. She had clearly rehearsed this new story carefully, and she delivered it with the same confidence she had always used when rewriting history to serve her purposes. But now she added threats that made it clear she knew about my investigation and was prepared to fight back. If you pursue this ridiculous legal action against me, you will destroy not just my reputation, but your father's as well, she continued. Do you really want the whole world to know that your father is a gambling addict who nearly lost everything we worked for? Do you want to be responsible for humiliating him and destroying his relationship with his friends and colleagues? The psychological manipulation was exactly what I had expected, but it still hurt to hear her using Dad as a weapon against me. She was betting that I would choose to protect the family's reputation over pursuing justice for myself, just like Marcus had done. She thought she could guilt me into dropping the case by threatening to expose Dad's supposed gambling problems, but Mom had made a critical error in her calculations. She assumed that I was still the same broken, insecure person she had spent decades destroying through psychological abuse. She did not realize that discovering her theft had actually liberated me from the shame and self-doubt she had instilled in me. I finally understood that every cruel thing she had ever said to me was a lie designed to serve her criminal purposes. More importantly, she did not know that I had one more ally who was about to change everything in ways she never could have anticipated. When Marcus betrayed me and warned Mom about my investigation, I thought my chance for justice was destroyed forever. Mom now knew about the evidence I had gathered, and she was prepared to fight back with her own lies and manipulation. Worse, she had turned my own brother against me by convincing him that exposing her crimes would somehow harm the family more than allowing her theft to continue. For 48 hours after Marcus's betrayal, I fell into the darkest emotional spiral I had experienced since leaving home 15 years earlier. All the old feelings of powerlessness and self-doubt came flooding back as I realized that Mom was still capable of manipulating the people around me and controlling the narrative about her own criminal behavior. I began to wonder if I had been foolish to think I could ever really win against someone who had been successfully manipulating and destroying people for decades. But sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected sources, and my salvation arrived in the form of a phone call from someone I had never met, but who knew more about my family's secrets than anyone else alive. Hello, Seraphina. My name is Patricia Hoffman, and I used to work as your mother's accountant, the voice on the phone said. I heard through mutual connections that you have been investigating some irregularities in your family's finances, and I believe I have information that could help you. Patricia explained that she had managed Mom's personal financial affairs for over 10 years before being abruptly fired 6 months earlier when she started asking questions about discrepancies in the trust fund accounting. Mom had claimed the firing was due to budget constraints, but Patricia suspected it was actually because she had gotten too close to discovering the truth about the missing money. Your mother is meticulous about record keeping, which is ironic, considering what she has been doing, Patricia said. She kept detailed documentation of every transaction, every forged signature, every lie she told to cover her tracks. I think she was so confident that nobody would ever investigate her that she never bothered to destroy the evidence. What Patricia revealed over the next hour of conversation was devastating proof that not only had Mom been stealing from my inheritance for years, but she had also been systematically defrauding multiple other family members and business associates. The gambling addiction story she had told Marcus was completely fabricated. Dad had never gambled away any significant money, and in fact, he had no idea that his wife had been stealing from family accounts for over a decade. Your father is going to be as shocked as you were when he learns what has been happening, Patricia explained. Your mother has been forging his signature on financial documents and using his identity to hide some of her theft. She has actually made him an unwitting accomplice in her crimes. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. Patricia had copies of emails and text messages between Mom and Marcus that proved he had known about at least some of the theft for over 2 years. The concerned, shocked reaction he had given me when I first told him about Mom's crimes had been completely fake. He had been helping her cover up her theft and lying to me about his involvement. Marcus has been receiving extra money beyond his normal trust fund distributions, Patricia explained. Your mother has been paying him essentially hush money to keep quiet about what she was doing to your inheritance. He knew you were being cheated, and he accepted money to help keep you from finding out. The evidence Patricia provided completely changed my understanding of the family dynamics and gave me the ammunition I needed to destroy both Mom's criminal enterprise and Marcus's reputation as an innocent victim of her manipulation. She had detailed records showing that Marcus had received over $800,000 in payments that were not part of his legitimate trust fund distributions. In exchange for this money, he had helped Mom create false documentation to explain missing funds and had actively discouraged other family members from asking questions about trust fund accounting. Patricia had been keeping copies of all these records as insurance, in case Mom ever tried to blame her for the missing money or claim that she had been the one stealing from the trust fund. When Mom fired her for asking too many questions, Patricia realized that the only way to protect herself from potential criminal charges was to expose the truth about what had been happening. "I have been waiting for someone in your family to start investigating," Patricia said. "I knew eventually the theft would become too obvious to hide, and I wanted to be ready to help the real victims when they finally discovered what had been done to them." With Patricia's evidence added to what my forensic accountant had already discovered, we now had an absolutely ironclad case against both Mom and Marcus. The documentation showed not just the financial crimes, but also the systematic psychological abuse that had been used to prevent me from questioning the theft. We had emails where Mom discussed strategies for keeping me broken down and compliant, and text messages where Marcus joked about how easy it was to manipulate me into accepting financial neglect. Rebecca, my attorney, was ecstatic when she reviewed Patricia's evidence. "This is prosecutorial gold," she said. "We can now prove not just embezzlement and forgery, but also conspiracy between your mother and brother to defraud you of your inheritance. The psychological abuse documentation will help establish the systematic nature of their crimes and could result in enhanced charges." More importantly, Patricia's evidence completely undermined the family protection narrative that Mom had used to manipulate Marcus into betraying me. When confronted with proof that he had been a willing participant in the theft rather than an innocent victim of Mom's lies, Marcus's entire defense collapsed. I decided to confront Marcus first, before revealing to Mom that I knew the full extent of her crimes and his complicity. When I called him and explained what Patricia had shown me, he initially tried to deny everything, but the evidence was too overwhelming to dispute. "Seraphina, you have to understand that Mom convinced me you were never going to find out about the trust fund," Marcus said, his voice shaking as he realized how thoroughly he had been caught. "She said you were too focused on your career to ever pay attention to family finances, and that it would be better for everyone if you just continued believing you were not entitled to any inheritance." The confession revealed the depth of their conspiracy against me. For years, they had been actively working together to keep me isolated from family financial information while systematically stealing money that was legally mine. Every time I had felt guilty about asking for help or support, they had been sitting on millions of dollars that belonged to me. Every time Mom had made me feel like a burden or a disappointment, she had been stealing from my future to fund her present lifestyle. "How could you do this to me?" I asked Marcus, genuinely trying to understand how someone could participate in such a systematic campaign of financial and emotional abuse against their own sister. "How could you take money to help her steal from me and then pretend to be shocked when I discovered what she had been doing?" Marcus's response revealed the extent to which Mom had corrupted our entire family system through her manipulation and control. He had become so accustomed to being rewarded for compliance and punished for questioning her authority that he had lost the ability to distinguish between family loyalty and criminal conspiracy. "She made it seem like protecting the family harmony was more important than individual fairness," Marcus said. "She convinced me that you were bitter and jealous and that giving you access to trust fund money would just make you more resentful and demanding. She said it was better to keep the peace by maintaining the status quo." But the most sickening part of his confession was the revelation that he had genuinely believed he deserved the extra money Mom had been giving him. The golden child treatment had become so normalized for him that he felt entitled to receive more than his fair share of the family resources, even when that meant actively participating in my financial abuse. Armed with Patricia's evidence and Marcus's confession, I was finally ready to confront Mom and deliver the justice she had been avoiding for decades. But I was not going to settle for just exposing her crimes and recovering my stolen money. I wanted her to experience the same kind of systematic destruction of her world that she had inflicted on me, and I wanted everyone who had ever believed her lies about me to understand exactly what kind of person she really was. The final confrontation was going to be more devastating than she could possibly imagine, because she had no idea that her own carefully kept records were about to become the evidence that would destroy her completely. The final confrontation with Mom took place on a cold Tuesday morning in Rebecca's law office, where I had arranged what Mom thought was going to be a private family meeting to discuss the foreclosure crisis and the documents she needed me to sign. She arrived confident and prepared to manipulate me one last time, completely unaware that she was walking into a room full of evidence that would destroy her life forever. Mom brought Marcus with her for moral support, and she had clearly coached him on how to present their fabricated story about Dad's gambling addiction and her heroic sacrifices to protect the family finances. She had prepared an elaborate presentation complete with fake bank statements and forged documents designed to make me feel guilty for questioning her financial management and threatening the family's reputation with legal action. Seraphina, I am so glad you agreed to meet with us privately, Mom began with her most sincere maternal voice. I know this whole situation has been stressful for everyone, but I think once you understand the full picture of what our family has been dealing with, you will see why we need to resolve this quietly, without involving lawyers or criminal charges. She launched into her prepared speech about Dad's supposed gambling problems and the financial sacrifices she had made to keep the family from losing everything. Marcus played his part perfectly, expressing concern about the shame and embarrassment that would result from public exposure of Dad's addiction and Mom's desperate attempts to save the family finances. I let them finish their entire presentation before I responded. I wanted them to commit fully to their lies so they could not later claim they had been misunderstood or taken out of context. When they were done, I calmly opened the folder of evidence that Patricia and my legal team had prepared, and I watched Mom's face change from confident manipulation to confused fear as she realized what she was looking at. Mom, I want to show you some documents that I think will clear up any confusion about what has really been happening with our family finances. I said, sliding copies of her own emails and bank records across the table. These are your personal financial records from the past 5 years, including detailed documentation of every penny you stole from my trust fund and every lie you told to cover up your theft. The color drained from Mom's face as she recognized her own handwriting and digital communications. She tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her hands shaking as she realized that her carefully constructed lies were crumbling in real time. Rebecca took over at this point, methodically walking Mom and Marcus through the evidence of their crimes. She showed them bank records proving that Dad had never lost any significant money gambling emails, where Mom discussed strategies for manipulating me, and documentation of the payments Marcus had received in exchange for his silence and cooperation. Mrs. Margaret Thompson, you are looking at evidence of systematic embezzlement, forgery, and fraud that spans over 15 years, Rebecca said with professional calm. The total amount of money you have stolen from your daughter's inheritance is $4.2 million, not including interest and damages. Your son Marcus has received over $800,000 in payments that constituted bribes to help you conceal your theft. Mom's response was exactly what I had expected, but still painful to watch. Instead of accepting responsibility for her crimes or expressing remorse for the damage she had caused, she immediately launched into attack mode and tried to blame everyone else for forcing her to steal. You have no idea what I have sacrificed for this family, she hissed at me with venom that reminded me of every cruel moment from my childhood. Everything I did was to protect us from financial ruin and keep this family together. If you had not been so selfish and demanding all the time, I would never have needed to make these difficult choices. Even when confronted with overwhelming evidence of her crimes, she was still trying to manipulate the narrative and make me feel guilty for her own criminal behavior. But this time, her psychological weapons had no power over me. I finally understood that her cruelty had never been about my shortcomings or failures. It had always been about maintaining control over me and covering up her theft. Marcus tried to minimize his own involvement by claiming that he had been manipulated by Mom and had not understood that what they were doing was criminal. But the evidence Patricia had provided showed clear knowledge and willing participation in the conspiracy to defraud me of my inheritance. Rebecca explained the criminal charges that would be filed against both of them, including embezzlement, forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. She also outlined the civil suits we would pursue to recover all the stolen money plus interest and damages. The total amount they would be liable for was approaching $6 million, which meant that even if they liquidated all their assets, they would still face significant prison time. But the legal consequences were only part of the justice I had planned for them. Jennifer, my crisis management consultant, had prepared a comprehensive media strategy that would ensure everyone in our extended family and social circle understood the truth about what had happened. Within hours of our confrontation, detailed information about Mom's crimes and Marcus's complicity would be shared with everyone who had ever believed their lies about me being the family disappointment. The psychological impact of this exposure was devastating for both of them. Mom had built her entire identity around being the responsible financial manager and devoted mother who was protecting the family from my supposedly destructive behavior. Marcus had built his identity around being the successful golden child who deserved all the advantages he had received. Learning that their reputations would be permanently destroyed by the truth about their crimes was almost as painful as the prospect of prison time. Dad was the most shocked victim of all when he learned what had been happening in his own household without his knowledge. Mom had been forging his signature and using his identity to hide some of her theft, making him an unwitting accomplice in crimes he knew nothing about. When Rebecca showed him the evidence, he was so devastated that he immediately filed for divorce and agreed to cooperate fully with the criminal investigation. Seraphina. I had no idea what your mother was doing to you, Dad said through tears during our first conversation in years. I thought you were just independent and did not want family help. I never knew she was stealing your inheritance and lying to all of us about why you struggled financially. I am so sorry I did not protect you from what she was doing. The months that followed were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and family healing that completely transformed my life and my understanding of my own worth and potential. Mom was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for embezzlement and fraud. Marcus received 3 years and was ordered to pay restitution for his role in the conspiracy. Both of them lost their professional licenses and their social standing in the community where they had built their reputations on lies. The civil suits resulted in full recovery of all stolen funds, plus significant damages for the psychological abuse and lost investment opportunities. The total settlement was over $7 million, which gave me financial security I had never imagined possible. But more importantly, the legal victory gave me psychological freedom from decades of self-doubt and shame that had been artificially imposed through Mom's manipulation. With the financial pressure lifted and the truth finally exposed, I was able to rebuild relationships with family members who had believed Mom's lies about me for years. Dad and I developed a real relationship for the first time, based on honesty and mutual respect, rather than the toxic dynamics Mom had created. Several aunts and uncles who had always treated me like the family disappointment apologized for believing Mom's version of events and welcomed me back into the extended family circle. I also discovered that I was not Mom's only victim. Patricia's investigation revealed that she had been systematically stealing from elderly relatives and family friends for years, using her reputation as a trustworthy financial manager to gain access to their accounts and then slowly draining their assets. The exposure of my case led to multiple other investigations that resulted in additional criminal charges and helped dozens of other victims recover money that had been stolen from them. The most satisfying part of the entire experience was watching Mom's carefully constructed facade of respectability crumble as the truth about her crimes became public knowledge. For decades, she had been regarded as a pillar of the community, a devoted mother, and a wise financial manager. Learning that she was actually a criminal who had been systematically abusing her own daughter destroyed her reputation so completely that she became a social pariah even before her prison sentence began. But the real victory was not the money or the legal consequences or even the destruction of Mom's reputation. The real victory was finally understanding my own worth and potential after decades of being told I was worthless and destined for failure. With the psychological chains of her abuse finally broken, I was able to pursue dreams and goals that I had never thought were possible for someone like me. I used part of the settlement money to start a nonprofit organization that helps victims of family financial abuse recover their stolen assets and rebuild their lives. Working with other people who had been systematically manipulated and stolen from by their own relatives gave me a sense of purpose that was more fulfilling than any corporate success I had achieved. I also reconnected with my passion for art that Mom had always dismissed as frivolous and impractical. With financial security assured, I was able to pursue painting seriously for the first time since childhood, and I discovered that I actually had significant talent that had been suppressed by years of being told I was not creative or artistic. Most importantly, I learned to build healthy relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care, rather than manipulation and control. The people in my life now are there because we choose to support and value each other, not because of blood relations or financial obligations. This chosen family of friends, colleagues, and fellow survivors has given me the emotional support and validation that I never received from my biological family. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that Mom's desperate phone call asking for my signature was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me the opportunity to expose her crimes, recover my stolen inheritance, and most importantly, to finally break free from the psychological prison she had built around me through decades of systematic abuse. The little girl who was told she would never amount to anything grew up to become a successful professional, a published artist, and an advocate for other victims of family financial abuse. The woman who was supposed to die poor and forgotten ended up wealthy, respected, and surrounded by people who genuinely love and value her for who she really is. Sometimes justice takes decades to arrive, but when it finally comes, it can be more satisfying than anything you ever imagined possible. Now, I want to hear from all of you watching this story unfold. Have you ever dealt with family members who used money or inheritance as a weapon of control? Have you discovered that people you trusted were lying to you about your own worth and potential? How did you find the strength to stand up for yourself when your own family was working against you? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, because I know many of you have faced similar betrayals and manipulations. Your stories matter, and they help other people realize they are not alone in dealing with toxic family dynamics. If this story of family karma and justice finally being served resonated with you, please hit that like button to help other people find this video. Subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about standing up to family bullies and discovering your own strength when the people who should protect you are actually the ones trying to destroy you. Share this video with anyone you know who might be dealing with family financial abuse or psychological manipulation. Sometimes hearing about someone else's victory can give people the courage to investigate their own situations and fight for the justice they deserve. Thank you so much for listening to my story and for supporting survivors of family abuse. I hope my experience helps you understand that no matter how powerless you feel right now, there is always hope for justice and healing when you find the courage to stand up for yourself and seek the truth. Remember that blood relations do not give anyone the right to steal from you, lie to you, or systematically destroy your self-worth. You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity by everyone in your life, especially the people who claim to love you. Never let anyone convince you that you are worth less than you actually are, because that is often the first step in a much larger campaign to take advantage of you. Stay strong, seek the truth, and never give up on fighting for the justice you deserve.